And with that, Untrail, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you. I can do a quick introduction for Untrail. Let's see, here we go. So Untrail is a high school senior at Booker T. Washington School in Tuskegee, Alabama. He's a soldier in the United States Army. And as he mentioned, he's also heavily involved in his high school's 4-H program, as well as Seed Inc., which I believe we'll learn a little bit more about. So Untrail has a presentation for us tonight on biointensive agriculture, the trench method. And we're also going to see a few demo videos. So definitely looking forward to it. Also, I see you, Rob. Hi, Rob, from Northport on a small farm, interested to learn more about biointensive gardening to use in our vegetable garden. Yes, same. Awesome. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go and pass it to you, Untrail. I'll get your slideshow queued up and we'll get this horse running.
Thank you. And thank you for the lovely introduction, by the way. All right. Biointensive agriculture, disclaimer. The trenching method is just one method of biointensive agriculture. It's also known as double digging. So you might hear me say double digging a lot as well. Next slide, please. Overview. This lesson will teach the audience of biointensive agriculture and its practical purposes in the real world. In this step-by-step interactive PowerPoint presentation, the listener will have the luxury of asking questions during each slide's conclusion point. At any point, if you are unsure or need clarity in a specific part of this presentation, I politely ask that you document your question, either mentally or physically, till the specific slide is done. So like after every single slide, everybody has the opportunity to ask questions. Okay, so introduction. When I was a young child, I remember receiving a rough introduction on the biology of plants and how they actually functioned. Seed meets soil, soil meets water, water meets sunlight, and there's boom, a plant. So granted, the brain of my third grade self had yet to grasp the concept of why biology functioned the way that it did. I remember asking questions like, why is it that plants need soil, or what really made plants grow? And every time, just like a magician hiding their secrets, I always received answers like, oh, that's just the way it works, or an even more cryptic response like, that's just the way nature works. Even going through biology as a freshman in high school, you'd think we'd address this issue, but instead of focusing more on biological components, we focused on like cells and different microbes and, just cellular material. So everything changed eventually when I met this man who actually became my teacher, who I'll talk extensively about. His name is Scott Muhammad. Next slide, please. My introduction to agriculture. Briefly after meeting Scott Muhammad and his beautiful family, they introduced me to the concept of biointensive agriculture and its use. I remember the first time I walked into his house, and instead of being greeted by the typical sight of a classic living room with a television and lounging equipment, I was greeted to the sight of plants of all types, mainly cacti, and a book of all subjects. Without speaking too much about his credentials, it was evident just by stepping into his house, he had my attention, and I was filled with questions. Next slide, please. Over the time I had known the Muhammads, I was taught the very core principle of what fueled their drive of teaching and studying agriculture, and their mission had become my own. Our agenda was a dual purpose because it is ultimately the responsibility for why I'm able to sit here and teach you extensively on this subject. We were to begin a project focused on atoning for the murders and violence in our community through the structural start of what came to be known as an Atonement Memorial Garden. This is an ongoing project that has successfully brought therapeutic closure to over 20 families in our community thus far. The garden contains a fruit tree planted in the name of each individual who was murdered and memorialized, as well as several beds of plants that grow with the dual purpose of aesthetic appeal as well as edible applications, complete with raised table beds for the elders in our community who could not walk but wanted to get a taste of growing plants. Next slide, please. Is there any questions about this so far? All right. What is biointensive agriculture? Time to get into it. Biointensive agriculture is the process of growing a plant or crop in its native. You said? Okay, cool. Sorry, I was reading the question. Biointensive agriculture is the process of growing a plant or crop in its native soil with no genetically modified or enhanced chemical agents that both repairs the soil as well as significantly reduces the annual water usage. And I meant to put this in there, but the actual percentage is roughly around 55 to 70% less water, by the way. That's like excellent. Trenching is the method of biointensive agriculture that describes the process of double digging the bed with 2 to 3 feet of arable soil and soft and fluffy texture that allows for the plant's roots to thrive and ultimately produce a plant of the best quality. This method is noticeably more thorough than regular gardening and planting. So yeah, it definitely takes a lot of work, as you will see later on in this presentation. But like the results are absolutely stunning. Okay, so the resources that you will need for this are very minimal. You will need a shovel. You will need wood chips. We'll talk about that later because you mentioned nitrogen earlier, Saf, I believe. That's definitely gonna cover that. You will need obviously your plants. You'll need a blanket or a tarp, and optional but not optional, but it's definitely preferred, quail or regular manure, compost, willow tea. That's basically like just it's basically a fermented version of willow leaves that you let sit in water, and a sturdy wooden board that is the length of your bed. It should be known that everything that like I listed on this list is something that we used inside of our garden project. Saf, could you play the first video, please?
All right, I'll go ahead and get it queued up now. 1 second. Here we go. Back to screen share. All right, can y'all see it? Yes. Okay.
Incorporated, and I'm out here with Untitled Chapter, one of our students. We are in the Ridgewood Community Housing Project, and we are building our first model of what an atonement memorial garden will look like. There were about 3 murders over here recently, within the last 2 years, and we're going to be memorializing 3 young men that were murdered. It's part of our atonement for allowing our community to collapse. So this morning, what we're doing is we're preparing a bed. And so we got a donation of quail manure from Brother Sherman Ahmed. Shout out to Sherman of New World Farms. It's a quail farm. And so he brought us a huge bag of quail manure. And what we did was we pulled strips of grass off of our bedding space. Then we laid down quail manure and we laid down wood chips. And now Trail and I are chopping it in. The site that we're at, the soil is very compacted. You have tractors driving over this, riding lawnmowers, people walking. So the soil is very compact. So when we first started, this was like a brick. And if you put a seed in a little hole that you drill in a brick, that seed, if it germinates, going to have very, very hard time growing, because its roots have to struggle to press through, the brick-like soil. You can see on Trails having a time just getting his shovel all the way down through it. So what we're doing is after we pull the strips of grass up, and we put our quail manure and wood chip mixture down. And the reason we're doing it like that, quail manure is very what you call hot. And once water gets on it, it's going to activate that quail manure from the rain or what have you. And it'll be so hot with nitrogen that it can burn the root tips of your plants, your seedlings and such. So we mix the wood chips in to kind of dilute the effect. So the wood chips, when you put those into the soil and you mix it up, they actually begin to decompose, but they draw nitrogen out of the soil to decompose. So when you put your quail manure in there with the wood chips, you balance it out, and over time we have a really good mixture. So we're going to break this stuff down. We're going to chop it in. Then we're going to remove the top layers of soil, put it on this tarp, and we're going to work through our subsoil and break that up. You know, so in the biointensive, pardon me, come on over.
He said his mom, he couldn't.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. We're going to work the subsoil, and the subsoil is also very compact. So we're going to go down a foot, and we're going to break that up, and we'll add some quail manure and wood chips down there as well. They'll break down over time. Then we're going to take our strips of grass, lay it over the subsoil. Then we're going to replace our topsoil on top of it. Somewhere we'll put a layer of wood chips. We'll lay down our pallet wood core base, and we'll fill the rest up with the topsoil. We'll get our seedlings and put them on top. So we'll keep you guys updated so you can see what this looks like.
That is enough. That is enough. Okay, so throughout this PowerPoint presentation, it will basically be covering everything that he just said extensively. And again, feel free to ask questions at the end of each PowerPoint. So the very first thing that he actually spoke about was the first step is removing that green layer. So that's what step one is. Okay, so make sure it's very important that you make sure you begin 4 to 5 days after a rainy day. So that way the soil is actually dried out. You definitely don't want to destroy the soil structure. That's what you definitely don't want to do. Find an area where you wish to begin this garden. So preferably an area that is not like too shaded. Honestly, if you're in the South like I am, then it's pretty much hot all the time. So like anywhere that doesn't contain shade is a good spot, I guess. Okay, so step one, with the shovel, outline the amount of land that you wish to convert into growing soil. Place your tarp or blanket next to the outline. Start by carefully removing the surface layer of grass at the bottom left corner of your bed by inserting your shovel directly below the surface and pushing down on the handle. You should hear a popping sound when you press down and lift the patch of grass out of the ground. This is caused by the grass roots detaching from the ground. Yeah, it's very satisfying to hear, by the way. So I don't have that step one covered in any of the videos, unfortunately, but it's basically you just taking your shovel and digging off the grass layer. Don't scoop the very surface of it, because if you do, it'll like slide and maybe damage your wrist. You want to get underneath the grass layer and then start popping it up. Once you do that, you will like hear it start to pop and it has a crackling sound. Okay. Once you lift the grass, place it roots up on an area outside of the growing space. This is to aid in the decomposition process of the grass and later adding to the green composting layer to the soil. Repeat this process throughout the entire plot till no surface grass remains. So there shouldn't be any grass layer remaining after you finish with this. You basically effectively remove the top of the bottle, you know? Next slide, please. Well, are there any questions on that? All right. Oh, okay, cool. Step two. Beginning from your starting corner, insert your shovel into the soil as far as you can go and pull down the handle, effectively taking a large chunk of earth from the ground. This will require a bit of elbow grease, and because the ground is most likely clay. Like if you're in Alabama, I should have specifically said this, but like southern states around Alabama, this is specifically like how like biointensive agriculture works with in every place. But this, what I'm talking to you about right now, like specifically states like Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, states like that, that's like this is where every single step that I'm talking to you about right now, this is where it's most effective. So let's see. Once you turn it over, you're basically going to be crunching it in. So step 2 is turn the large chunk of clay soil over and begin crunching it in with your shovel. You will see that in the video if it sounds too complicated. The texture you should achieve should be as fine as possible, and the soil should now extend a few inches above the surface as the soil is less compact. Dig the now refined soil out and throw it onto the tarp you placed down in step 1. So you're basically going to be digging a foot of soil out for the entire thing, but you're going to start with your first trench. The trenches are basically, okay. It'll be better described in the video, but trenches are, they're like rows. They're basically the rows that you would use to grow your crops in. So each trench is going to be a foot deep when you first dig it out, and then you are going to repeat this procedure throughout the entire first row. So you're going to basically dig all of the dirt out of the first row, but it's going to be very fine dirt that you're digging out. Could you please play the second video, please, Saf?
You got it. 1 second.
Well, are there any questions about that? Well, maybe the video will cover it.
I have a question on trail, actually. So I have like a small rototiller. And I made the mistake last year of not removing the side top. But would it do you know if it would damage the stool structure if I use the rototiller to help kind of break up that soil and then dig it out?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not well, I'm gonna put it like this. I'm not well versed with a lot of different planting methods, including the tool you just described. I assume it's like a tiller.
Yeah, it's just like an electric tiller, but it's small.
I don't. You said, okay, could you repeat the question one more time? I think I'm getting a grasp of it.
So for this kind of stage you're talking about, when you're just breaking up the soil and then digging it out, could I use a rototiller on that to break up the soil and then dig it out and put it on the tarp to just help break it up?
Actually, I'm not very sure how the electric, I think I'm definitely positive you could use it, but I know for a personally that the reason why we used our shovels was because we didn't have a lot of different resources, also because it allowed for us to be more specific. So if you are going to use an electric tiller, so to speak, I would recommend that you actually, that would make your job so much easier now that I think about it. If you do that, then I would recommend that you go back and you crunch it all up to very fine pieces with your shovel.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I thought Larry's comment, the little Manus tillers work great for that. That's what I got. But it definitely, you can't get out of the elbow grease either way. But let me go. Thank you for answering. I'll go ahead and put on the video.
All right, so what we doing here, it rained, so I had to lay off for a few days. The soil is dried enough for me to work with it without destroying the soil structure. And what I've done is I've taken the first foot of earth out of this bed. Then I went down and started breaking up the compacted subsoil. And as you can see, it started fluffing up, where it's nearly half, maybe 6 inches below where I started. So I dug down a foot, but when I broke everything up, it raised up 6 inches. So it's about 6 inches from the surface. And as I continue to work with this subsoil, and you can see how there are bits of clay with the red in it. Oops, the red in it. Now that red is iron, and this is some of the substance that George Washington Carver used to make his dyes out of. He would take this kind of soil and he would create reds and oranges and dyes and paints and stuff. A lot of people don't know that Dr. Carver did more than just crop rotations or sweet potatoes, et cetera, et cetera. This man was actually dealing with dyes, and he was a prolific artist. Beautiful paintings if you ever get a chance. I think some of it may be online, or you may have to come down to Tuskegee and visit us, and we'll take you to his museum. What I'm going to do is going to add leaves to the subsoil. I'm going to add some quail manure to the subsoil. I'm going to dig it in, twist it in so that it becomes part of it. And in biointensive agriculture, this process of aerating your soil 2 feet down, breaking up your subsoil, adding amendments to both the subsoil and the first foot of topsoil is called texturizing your soil. So it's a little bit different than just saying soil texture, which refers, of course, to the amount of silt, sand, or clay you have in your soil mixture, which forms a loam. So that's what we're doing. Check you out in a little bit.
All right, take it back to the presentation.
All right. So one thing that I might want to point out is that when my teacher was digging his bed out, so he was already started on the subsoil. We're going to talk about that right now. But when he did it, it's like the soil still could have used like a second day or two to dry out a little bit more. And if you do that, then it fluffs up a lot more. So he mentioned that he took a foot of soil out and he began to dig the second foot up. When he was digging that second foot up, it began to fluff up about 6 inches, meaning like you just got 6 inches, like just by decompacting the soil, you know? So when you do that and the soil is actually dried, then you will achieve the right the right texture that you're looking for, and it'll be so much better. So, okay, step 2. Beginning from your starting corner, insert your shovel. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to be on step 3, right? Okay, thank you. Step 3, grab your sturdy wooden board and place it alongside your trench. He didn't need to do this because it wasn't like 4 feet wide, I guess. If you have a very short trench, like if you have a very short trench, just maybe about like a 2 foot by 5 foot, or like a 3 foot by something, you know, you don't have to like grab a wooden board. But if you like have a wide trench, then you might want to do something like that. So grab your sturdy wooden board and place it alongside your trench. Repeat the same digging process you originally did in the previous trench. And in the new trench, allow the soil to stay in the bed this time. So instead of digging the soil out from the foot that you just did, you're going to let it stay in the bed. You're basically just fluffing this up. When you finish fluffing it, it should come up to the surface. So it should look like you didn't take anything out. Really, that's how it's going to look if you've done it correctly. So grab your layering substrate, EI, manure, wood chips, grass, and etc., and spread a layer throughout the length of your bed. That's where like the green that you took out from the surface that comes in, as well as like all of your other substrate. Begin thoroughly mixing in the substrate with the soil you just refined with the shovel. And when you're finished, the soil should now be surface level or close to surface level. Is there any question? I mean, I know it sounds like magic. There wasn't any soil there before, and you know, just it was a foot of soil gone. Now it's back. So, any questions? Okay, good. Y'all are very
I have a question. I just want a quick one. What's the purpose of the board?
The board, I should have gotten into that because now that I mention it, like, okay, so the board is to make sure that you don't compact the soil even further. When you eventually like move forward, you're gonna realize that like standing on the soil, it's like when you're when you're standing on the soil, it's sort of gonna make it like lean in and like it's gonna push it into the trench and it's gonna get so annoying. So if you're standing on the board and you're in the middle of it and you're digging the soil out, it's going to help with that process a lot.
Got it. Thank you.
It's optional though. Oh, could you play the next slide, please? I'm sorry, video. I meant the video. This is basically him just doing the process that I described.
Got it. And you got a question in the chat. The question is, does the type of wood chip matter? Oak, pine, etc.
No, sorry, I should have mentioned that it just has to be a sturdy board. Just make sure it's sturdy and make sure that it's like it extends past both ends of your bed.
I think
You wanna-
until he was talking about the wood chips that you put
The
in there.
You know, actually, I don't think it does matter personally. But personally, I would use something that decomposes easily. That's what I would use. So, something that won't actually interfere with, the decomposition process, even though it's obviously going to decompose anyway. Just use something that decomposes a little better. So as long as they're not. Could you please the question? And he's grabbing the quill. I forgot to mention that make sure the substrate that you don't have to pause it. Just make sure that the substrate you use has the like it should be dry. Just forgot to mention that part. You don't have to play the rest of this. He's just doing the entire thing throughout the bed, fluffing it up till it reaches surface level. You don't have to play the rest. But yes, could you please read the question that Mr. Larry had, I believe?
1 second. Let's see. Well, he was just adding into the comment about wood chips, about as long as they're not fresh and green and sappy. He should be good.
Right, absolutely, 100%. I agree with you, 100%. Okay, so this slide. Move the board. Okay, here we go. Move the board to the right. Okay, move the board to the right, a trench length, and begin to break down and crunch the soil with like a shovel length as described in the second step. So you're basically going to be doing the same thing you did in the first. Well, you're going to basically be doing the same thing that you did in the second step, where you dug the first layer out, but you're not going to be actually digging it out. You're just going to be turning it over and crunching it in. So you're going to crunch it in until it's really fine. Then once you do that, you are going to, let's see, where is it? I want to get this wrong. Yep. Okay, so you're going to remove that layer. You're not going to throw it on the same tarp that you like threw the first layer of soil on. You're going to throw it onto the second trench. So the one that's just been fluffed up all the way to the surface level, you're going to take the dirt out of the second trench and you're going to put it in the first trench. So it's going to fluff up a foot above the surface. Let's see. Begin fluffing the second foot of soil till it reaches the surface level. Yep. So you're going to basically begin doing the exact same thing that you did in the first step. You're going to fluff it up and it's going to reach surface level all over again. And if you didn't notice, it's basically it's basically setting up a trend for what you're going to be doing like throughout the entire bed. You're going to fluff it up. You're going to remove the layer, put it in the layer that previously came before, and then you're going to continue moving. Are there any questions? Did I confuse anybody? I could be a little bit more specific, maybe. Okay, good. No confusion. Let's see. And the last step. So there are a total of 5 steps. When you get to the end, your bed should be fluffed a foot past the surface, but the last trench the last trench length should only extend to the surface. So when you actually like get to the end, the entire bed is gonna like extend a foot above the surface, except the last end part of it. The end part of it is only gonna extend to the surface, but the rest of it is gonna extend a foot past the surface. And you're basically gonna drag the tarp that you put the first amount of dirt on, and then you're going to put it on the top of that last trench length. And then the entire bed should be a foot above the surface. And that is how you do, that's basically all you have to do when you're double digging your bed. Next slide, please. Okay, what now? Now that your trenches are done, you are free to plant any average garden variety of plants and expect your produce to be absolutely luscious. So by the way, all of the pictures that I've shown you are actual pictures from our garden. Except for that one cartoonish picture in the beginning. Next slide, please. These are just going over the, yes, please. These are just going over the like plants that you can grow. So like, you know, tomatoes, bell peppers, lettuce, squash, hibiscus. We grew hibiscus in the next picture. And all of this has been grown there. But this is like grown in the private. This is grown by one of the people we showed how to do this, and they grew it in their own backyard. So like we thought that was really pretty, and we just took a picture of it, you know. So next slide, please. Why am I telling you this? So here's the interesting part for me, at least. It is known that less than 2% of the food in Alabama's groceries. Oh, all right, there we go. Thank you. It is known that less than 2% of the food in Alabama's grocery stores can be traced back to Alabama soil. It is historically seen that in events such as famines, the states with major food insecurities tend to do even more poorly than like those that actually have their own food sources. My goal is to make farming and knowledge of farming more accessible to the general public in order to secure our chances of gaining food stability. Next slide, please. My mission. I hope to begin a business of growing a neighbor-friendly movement that encourages the diversity of different people, whether they be in an urban setting or a rural farmland, to begin the process of growing their own plants. Once they begin growing their own plants, I want them to gift or trade someone a plant seedling who doesn't have one or wishes to learn about them. This if turned into a trend would significantly increase our likelihood of food security and stability. So if we know anything about our generation, we know that our generation likes trends. Everything. Like that's our generation as a whole. I don't mean to speak specifically about our generation. This could, I'm sure, like extend to every generation. But I know that if we made this into a trend where we actually gave people plants and like actually gave them something productive to do, and like, hey, I challenge you to try to grow this, or you want to learn about this and let's see how well you do with this plant or like with this, then I'm sure that like we would increase our food stability like tenfold. Like I said, we grow less than 2% of our food. So, you know, if famine happens, it's every man for himself. So like, you know, this is a trend that could definitely help with that. If I'm not saying like, I'm hoping something like that will happen. I'm just saying, you know, prepare for the worst. Shout outs. Shout out to Brother Scott and Sister Erica and their organization Seeding for teaching me about agriculture and its practical use. Their organization is an ongoing nonprofit that could benefit from the support of great people like you in order to build more projects like the Atonement Memorial Garden, as well as provide additional resources for the garden. Could you please put up the business card?
One second. Let's go ahead and grab that. All right.
All right. And if you want to know any more about our organization and seeding in general, and any more about biointensive agriculture that I didn't cover in the video, my teacher is definitely the best option. So you could email him or call, like you could call his number or email him at the website that is listed right there. If there are no questions, Well, are there any questions I should ask? I'm sorry. Are there any questions currently?
I have a question. Actually, I saw Layla get off mute. Layla, if you want to go first.
Yes, ma'am.
I did have a question. I just wanted to say that this was very informational on trail, and you did an amazing job. Because like now I want to like actually try it and grow a few things. Now,
Thank you. That means if I at least reach one person, that means I achieved my ultimate goal and purpose of this evening session. So thank you. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Are there any more questions or comments? I'm sorry, was it Mr. Larry? I believe you spoke earlier about not knowing what biointensive agriculture was, or like not hearing about it until now, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong. What was your question? And if so, could you clarify, did you learn anything today from today's session?
Oh, I did. Thank you, Antrail. I'm kind of on the same track doing that stuff with inside nursery beds in my high tunnel. Same thing. I added more amendments, but you've really well addressed the problems in clay soil and doing that by double digging by that. That's a great idea. Add a little bit of lime and correct the pH is all I would have to add to that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That'll
yes, sir.
help you too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I remember like when we were growing our hibiscus, we specifically like did that. I forgot to put that in there. Thank you for that. Thank you for your feedback. We did that with and we sprinkled a little lime on the surface, and our soil was pretty good. So thank you for that.
That's the time to do it when you're doing all that double digging.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Are there any more questions or comments in general?
I had one more. I had a question. Is this an all year round? Like, can I do this in like the fall, or is it like specifically in the spring?
Oh, good. I should have mentioned this before. Oh my God. Wow. Y'all are making me realize how much I didn't list. So like, yeah, you actually can. Biointensive agriculture is an all year thing. So like we have winter crops out there where we planted like winter cabbage and a bunch of different stuff. We planted like fall crops for like gourds and watermelon and pumpkins and things like that. We did a lot of things. So it's pretty year round.
My question is related to that on trail. Am I going to like maintain that soil structure for some time if I don't plant immediately? Like,
no, trust me.
okay.
Biointensive I've answered this again. Biointensive agriculture, it's like it functions to the point where like once your soil is like that, and you're even if it like sort of hardens back up, it's never gonna go back to its original state. So like the plant like freely move no matter how you plant them. But the only recommendation I would have is if you're going to like let the soil stay like that, it's gonna be like that regardless. It's gonna be great to plant in still. But I would recommend that you fluff it up a little. It's really not hard at all. It's really just, you could go through it with your tiller because it's already been broken up. There's years that it's been compact compared to like, just what you did, and you go back and just fluff it back up and, start over. No big deal.
Cool. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Are there no more questions, concerns, and comments? All right.
All right. Great job. I learned a lot. Honestly, I'm gonna be using this over the next couple months.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And just want to take a moment to encourage y'all to definitely check out Seed Inc. They're wonderful teachers in the community in Tuskegee, but also across the state. And just remember ASAN as well. We are supporting folks like On Trail sharing this information with all generations, so more people can get involved in agriculture and recognize that it's possible. So please consider joining ASAN if you haven't already. I can put the information for that in the chat. And besides that, all we have left is just a quick poll. It's just like three questions, just so we can get your feedback here. I'll go and launch that. And beyond that, just thank y'all for being here. Hope you learned something and enjoy y'all's evening. So just launch that poll, and that's about it.